This was an unbelievable hit by genius pilots and genius people in the military, and they're not being given credit for it because we have scum that's in this group, and not all of you are. You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally, and it knocked it out. The original word that I use, I guess it got us in trouble because it's a strong word. It was obliteration.
No president has the authority to bomb another country that does not pose an imminent threat to the U.S. without the approval of Congress. Americans deserve to have a say in whether or not their children and grandchildren will be involved in another war. So thank you. Thank you, first of all, for saying that. And I read your whole piece about impeachment. It's really good, and it's very well reasoned. Can you talk a little bit about your thinking on all this?
Yeah, so, first, I think everybody wants to say, well, what is an impeachable offense? And an impeachable offense is ultimately a political question. Yeah. I think, as I mentioned in my piece, if Donald Trump fired Pete Hegseth tomorrow and didn't call the Senate first, would we think that was an impeachable offense? Probably not. But that's what Andrew Johnson was impeached for once upon a time. So, what the public thinks is impeachable, it's a circuitous issue. And I don't for a second suggest that I think right now we have the votes to impeach, and we certainly don't have the spines in the Senate to remove. Right. But I think we have an obligation as members when we say that something is beyond the pale to move public opinion, not follow it. Otherwise, we shouldn't claim to be leaders. And
thank you.
The War Powers Act, which I would note Mike Johnson somehow thinks is unconstitutional. The War Powers Act, forget about the language of the War Powers Act. It was passed because of a concern in the Vietnam era that the president was declaring war, was not going through and seeking congressional consent because the Constitution does say that Congress has the power to declare war. And so then we get into this, well, is this a police action? Is this a war? Is this just a bombing? Are these CIA black ops? And I don't want to get in the angels of a head of a pin conversation around, well, Barack Obama bombed this person or Joe Biden took out this bad person. In every one of those instances, at least in my time in Congress, whether or not the action the president took was proportionate, the action was consistent with intel that the Congress had received. And in this instance, Iran is a very clear threat. I want to be very clear. Yeah. We do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Right. And in fact, we took efforts under the Obama administration with the JCPOA to create sanctions, to have an international group that was going in and monitoring what Iran was doing. What we know about Iran's nuclear program is because even after Donald Trump pulled out of that, the international monitors were still there. Yes. And so we know everything I think I'm going to maintain this is still true because the only person who says it's not true is Donald Trump. What we're fairly certain of is that Iran did not have enough material combined to make a nuclear weapon, maybe weeks, months away, very close. Even if they had that material, they didn't have it mounted on a weapons system. They didn't have that weapons system connected to a delivery system, a missile, certainly not one that could reach the United States. And what I'm telling you is consistent with what Marco Rubio and Tulsi Gabbard were saying as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. Under oath.
And so if the president can then go in and bomb that country's nuclear facility and openly say, well, I just don't trust the intelligence that I've been received. J.D. Vance is saying we're just going on vibes. If he has the authority to do that and Congress doesn't push back, then he has the authority to burn North Korea. He has the authority to bomb Pakistan. Yeah. And Trump, sometimes does he think France is an ally? I don't know. France has nuclear weapons. Does he have the authority to bomb them? Yeah. Right? And so we as Congress have to sit here and say, we are either a co-equal branch, and when a bully shows up, we punch him in the mouth, or we have decided that we are incapable of leadership and we should go home and we should tell the that we are idiots. Don't send us to Congress. Yeah,
we got to draw a line in the sand, Rep. I couldn't agree with you more. And we were updating you on the Pete Hegseth press conference. A lot of yelling, no new evidence of anything. I don't know if the briefing is going to be canceled because clearly, the facts aren't lining up with their propaganda. But to your point, you said, in your piece, high crimes and misdemeanors can be a political barometer of some kind. I think we've talked before about my dad in Goldwater. I mean, it was my dad's running mate, Goldwater, who told Nixon it's time to go. That they, and in that case, they probably did have the votes to impeach. But I think your point is so important that's so defeatist to just go, oh, we don't have the votes, so we just shouldn't. I have to read this to people. So you just said. You said we're clear-eyed about the fact the current Republican-controlled House doesn't have the votes to impeach, and the Republican Senate certainly doesn't have the two-thirds majority to convict. Does that mean you just throw up your hands and accept that it's not politically possible? No. You get engaged in the political messiness of democracy. So important. Every American who we celebrate for expanding our democracy, from the suffragettes to the civil rights leaders of the 1960s, earned our praise because they closed the gap between that which was necessary and that which was politically possible. That is so. I just think that's so on the head, right? Because
that's the history of America, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry to read to you. I know you wrote it. So
keep in mind, whatever you think of the last election, Kamala won every demographic that our founders thought shouldn't vote.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's a great point.
Yeah, but you just said, as it relates to members of Congress, the way to close that gap is to use our oversight and convening power to hold hearings and conduct investigations, including but not limited to a full impeachment inquiry. Use those processes to bring facts into the public eye, and if warranted, move the politics and build a consensus, but also have the humility to be open to facts that might contradict our theory, because the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do. You say it's also because the public is smart enough to know a witch hunt when they see one. Impeachment is a serious process and needs to be conducted with all the solemnity that it requires. I mean, the people saw it during the Clinton impeachment, didn't they, Rep? Where it was over a personal, consensual... and so obviously, and the polling now shows we've been through Iraq. The public is not buying what Trump is selling about this whole thing.
And I'd frankly come more recently than Clinton, and this is something that is not, I don't know that it's something to be proud, but since I was last on your show, 5 years ago, I've participated in half the presidential impeachments that have ever happened in our country. Have been through the attempted impeachment of Biden, which never got to a vote, and saw the House impeach Alejandro Mayorkas.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real danger in abusing this impeachment to say that whenever we don't like somebody, we're going to go through. I think the Senate did the right thing when Mayorkas was impeached of just tabling and saying, we're not even going to consider this because this wasn't serious. Schumer was right to do that. I do think we have to be very cautious about rushing to impeach, because Thune is going to look at what Schumer did. And if we haven't really built that case in a robust way, he's going to say, well, you dismissed the Mayorkas impeachment, so I didn't dismiss this one.
Well,
I think what Johnson is deathly afraid of is the truth.
Thank you. And you make the point that the House is just like an indictment, and the Senate is the actual trial. I mean, you're just putting the facts out there. And can I just say, this is the best part of your piece. You said, in a country built on the rule of law, which I still hope we are, process matters, transparency matters, standards of evidence matter. And if a prosecutor or a member of Congress believes something is worthy of punishment, they have to remain committed to all three. Due process has to happen before impeachment and again before removal. In other words, when individuals threaten our institutions, defend the institution, to do anything else is to let them win. I mean, you're right. That's what they're afraid of, the transparency and the facts.
Yeah. And what's scary, and I think what's hard is, sometimes when you defend the institution, people say, well, why aren't you moving quickly? The other side is willing to break things. And that's true, right? I mean, it's a lot easier to be an arsonist than it is to be a builder.
Yeah.
I think we as Democrats who care about this institution, I'm not saying we shouldn't be willing to throw a punch, but I also think that we need to brace ourselves for the fact that it is going to take so long to rebuild what Trump and the Republicans have broken. It's going to take longer than we want. It's going to make us all very frustrated of why aren't we fixing everything right away. But if we rush, then we are both going to be complicit in saying the institutions don't matter, the checks and balances don't matter. Let's just elect autocrats.
Every Republican president in my lifetime, representative, has crashed the economy and gotten us into an unnecessary war in the Middle East. And, so here we are. You close by saying, my commitment to you and to our democracy is to always embrace sunlight in pursuit of the answers to those questions, to fulfill our oversight responsibilities, and to follow the facts where they lead, including but not limited to impeachment when necessary. I mean, you're right. Mike Johnson has just given up Congress's role. I mean, they've just willingly. The only rule has become if Trump does it, it's okay, whatever it is.
I mean, Trump has got. I think when Trump leaves, it will be interesting to see what happens to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
His model is of a bully, and I remember my dad telling me when I was a kid that if a bully, never throw a punch on the playground unless you get punched, and in that case, punch back harder.
Yeah.
And and when the bully shows up and says, "Give me your apple," if you give it to him, he's going to get your sandwich tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mike Johnson calls Donald Trump every morning and says, "Hey, my mom's making my lunch tomorrow. What do you want?"
And let's face it, no one wants the apple anyway. So, but when they come for your sandwich, then somebody said it, and it reminds me of you and a lot of the other Dems that we love. It's not between like progressive and conservative Dem. It's between fighters and folders in our party, and you're a fighter. And J.B. Pritzker, who we've had on, who I guess is running for a third term there. I think people love the way he's fighting back, right? The way you guys are fighting for Illinois.
I mean, I think in moments like this, we need Churchills, right? We need people who are going to be honest about saying, I can't promise you anything more than blood, sweat, and tears. I can't guarantee that if we fight, we'll win, but I can guarantee we'll lose if we don't. And I think people respond to that. I think people want to be motivated by that. What we don't need is mansions.
Yeah. Representative, I keep saying Trump is at war with Iran and California, and I'm sure to some extent Illinois. I mean, he so obviously is coming for blue states and blue governors, and I just think what's happening here in LA is just beyond comprehension. I'm sure you're going through some version of it there. I was so struck by this landscaper that they maced and beat up and threw into a van. He has 3 sons that are Marines that might get sent into an unnecessary war of Donald Trump's in Iran if this thing continues to escalate. But anyway, the son said, "It doesn't make me love my country less. It makes me love it more because I see all these people standing up for people like my dad. And it's just what this country is all about, coming together as a community, loving each other and just helping each other." I mean, that just really struck me.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It hasn't that's always been sort of the thesis of America. I mean, I always like to remind people that, before the Constitution was ratified, Thomas Paine was trying to convince people that it was worth becoming the United States and not a bunch of individual states. And he has that line where he said, "Our great title is as Americans, our lesser title varies with the place. It's by our great title we're known abroad, and by our lesser title we're known at home." And we have always had people in America like Donald Trump who say, it's more important that you're from Kentucky than that you're an American. And we have always grown and held this union together because people like the gentleman you just mentioned and the people who are cheering for him and saying, no, I don't care who you voted for. I don't care where you live. We are all Americans, and there's something unifying.
Yeah,
and as long as we double down on that, we are a great country.
Yeah.
Once we lose that, we're a bunch of individual states.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the America we believe in. And, just this one, the breaking news, get your take. The Trump administration plans to make legally working asylum seekers eligible for deportation. People who followed the rules, sought refuge, built their lives here, targeted anyway. This isn't policy, it's persecution. I mean, the thing that gives me hope is his polling is atrocious and on every subject, including this mass deportation he apparently ran on.
Well, look, what you just read on its face is illegal. Sometimes I wish I could grab Donald Trump and shake him by the neck and say, turn off Fox and put Schoolhouse Rock on the fucking television.
Oh, wow. Oh, he dropped it. You can't drop an F-bomb on this show.
Yeah, the FCC will come after us, but we have...
We're on WCPT Chicago.
We covered it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we covered it. We're fine.
Wow, that was spicy. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll replace that with something else. But you don't actually get to change the laws of the United States with an executive order.
Yeah.
You go to Congress, and if Congress supports that and it passes both chambers and you sign it into law, the people who are legally entitled to work in this country are legally entitled to work because of laws.
Yeah. I just love that we have any number of trashy comedians on this show, and Bella, our board op, was not expecting that from a super smart client scientist nerd congressman. She's like, okay, I got it.
Hey, it's nothing that Donald Trump hasn't said on CNN.
Exactly. Yes.
True that. So let's just quickly the big ugly bill. Where are we? I mean, we're at the stage of fascism where they're zip tying old people in wheelchairs in the Capitol yesterday for asking for health care, for protesting Medicaid cuts. What do you see happening with this?
Look, the good news is that it's massively unpopular. The public understands it. The public's making noise, continue to make noise. The fact that Republicans aren't doing town halls means they know they have a problem. And the delays that have happened so far are because they don't know quite how to get out of that problem. I think the challenge that we're looking at on the House side is that the so-called moderate member, they're not making any effort to include the Dems. So every Dem is going to vote no because it's a terrible bill. I mentioned on committee yesterday that when someone's serving up a horse manure cake, there's no real sense in arguing about what kind of flour they used. Yeah. And so the nuances, the parts of the bill that might be acceptable are not the point. The so-called moderates in the House who have said that they've got an issue with the salt cap, that have said they've got an issue with some of the clean energy credits, have a history of folding under any pressure from Trump. And so I think the Senate is working under the assumption that they don't need to worry about what that cohort says. Yeah. The cohort in the House who wants this to be meaner, that the Medicaid cuts aren't steep enough, that the SNAP cuts aren't steep enough, this is the Chip Roy wing of the party. They have a habit of not folding. And so I think the expectation is the Senate is more concerned about sending a package to the House that isn't mean enough than they are about sending a package to the House that might address some of the issues that the public writ large is upset about.
Keep fighting the good fight for us. We're running long on time, but give Al Green a big kiss for me. Vote yes on impeachment. Get all your colleagues to make the Congress function again. And I'm going to start FaceTiming you from John's house every weekend now. So this was a grave mistake.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Steph.
Hey, are you traveling this summer? Will you leave instructions for your house sitter, the name and number of your vet, maybe, the code to your alarm system? Think about the steps you take to prepare for vacation, and you'll get a sense of what goes into a knockbox. Just go to theknockbox.com, use the code Stephanie. Knockbox is a complete system that helps you organize all of your accounts, possessions, and estate plans for your next of kin. Each knockbox, that's Knockbox, comes with a comprehensive checklist that helps ensure you add everything they'll need to manage your estate when you are gone. From your funeral directives to your insurance policies, even the keys to your storage unit, the Knockbox helps you organize it all. If you've got a household, you need a Knockbox. Right now, Stephanie Miller listeners save 16% off the Knockbox of your choice. Just go to theknockbox.com/Stephanie. That's theknockbox.com/Stephanie to get 16% off. Stay calm, get organized today.